So before we get into this, I just want to plug my Substack in case anybody doesn't know about it. I've got some new stuff up there. You could become a free subscriber. You could become a paid subscriber. It's called Undomesticated. We cover very similar topics as we do here. Check that out, link below. I wanted to go into what is another thing to be aware of aside from just developing your intuition, because I know everyone thinks they're doing that, whether they're doing it or not, right? It's kind of hard to to distinguish like who has an unbiased or unconditioned intuition is the term I use. So how do you know if someone has an unconditioned intuition versus a conditioned intuition? That's kind of what we talked about in the last video. So it's not going to be clear to you. So there's another thing I want to talk about. It's not going to be clear to you if you have similar blocks that the people you believe have, right? So if you believe in the conservatives and everything they say is true and right, blah, 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 you're not going to be able to see that your intuition is conditioned in the same way as your leaders, right? So what else is there to talk about? If that's not always a guarantee for awakening and consciousness and seeing clearly and knowing the truth, I want to talk about just media and how media works. So at one point there was a chart that went around on the internet talking about how, there's this appearance of like 50, 100 plus different media outlets, but then you can trace them all back to like 2 companies, 3 companies or something like that. So really there's only like a couple sources of media. And so it's important to assume that your media, mainstream media, at least even alternative media potentially, is coming from one of those couple of sources, and it has some sort of an angle or an incentive for what it wants you to think and feel, and then how it wants you to behave as a result of that. So I want to talk about something I never hear anyone talk about, and that's how media brainwashing works, or media conditioning, shaping consciousness. How does that happen? Again, back in the video I did about how conditioning doesn't happen, people keep hyping up this notion of critical thinking. Critical thinking will not save us. Critical thinking is often how people get conditioned to believe, to think that they know everything, they know the truth. It is this left brain phenomenon, and it's very easy, as we've talked about, to convince the left brain that it is God, that it knows everything. And this has been shown, as I always talk about, in neuroscience. When there's right hemisphere damage in particular, there can be more of a tendency for delusionality because the left brain really takes over. It hallucinates a lot like AI would hallucinate. This is an interesting thing. This is a whole different video, but the left brain and its delusions can be compared. I'm making this claim right now. I'm going to talk more about this, but it can be compared to, for example, ChatGPT's hallucinations. It's absolutely certain, it's giving absolutely factual, logical information, and it's dead wrong. This is what happens when people have right hemisphere damage. The right hemisphere is handicapped, and then things kind of go downhill from there. And as Dr. McGilchrist says, we in the Western world are behaving like people who have right hemisphere damage. So I want to explain how this left-right hemisphere split relates to how we take in media. So media is basically able to, whether it's on purpose or not, it's able to exploit this hemisphere disconnect. First, we're going to set up how to understand this, and then I'm going to tell you how it relates to media. So the brain is split, right? And the left brain's job through evolution, the way the left brain developed is it developed to manipulate objects, situations, basically to get what it wants out of a situation. So that means, so if you're like manipulating, if you're basically the best example to use is if you're getting yourself food. If you're out in the wild, right? We were getting what we needed however possible. So we had one focus, get the thing, right? That is how the left brain evolved. That is what neuroscience shows. The conscious left brain is just getting. It's just focused. So that means it's focused on one thing. This is what I'm doing right now. The one thing in front of me, that's what the left brain is focused on. And this is by design. This is how it developed to keep us, to give us power in our environments, to be able to manipulate things, to set things up, to build houses, whatever it is, right? Now, so what is the right brain doing while the left brain is doing all that important, hard work? The right brain is scanning the environment and taking in everything. So while the left brain is focused, it's doing one thing. The right brain is doing the opposite. It's zoomed out and it's taking in everything on the periphery, everything in the environment, right? So what is the value of what the right brain's doing? Well, basically, through evolution, what neuroscientists think is that it's preventing us from being killed. So think about it. You're building a house, you're getting yourself food, the left brain's doing a thing. The right brain has to kind of keep watch and just absorb the environment. So the right brain is the periphery. It's everything that's not the main focus. It gives us the periphery so that we can just kind of stay aware of all of these outside circumstances, even though it's not the main focus. So what happens in a culture where that right brain is being kind of snuffed off? It's not important. Don't talk about it. Don't think about it. It won't make you money. Don't do art. Don't be creative. Don't pay attention to this expanded kind of sense of wholeness and connection to all things. Don't pay attention to that. That's stupid. Focus on the one thing right in front of you, right? So it kind of shrinks you down. And this is the perfect environment where media can now have its way with you. So in media, again, let's say you're reading an article from the New York Times, whatever. What you're doing is you're reading and you're focusing on the main story. These are the main points. This is what I'm looking at. This is what is happening. This is what they're saying is happening. But guess what? You still have a right brain. And your right brain is still in the background, unconsciously taking in all of the context, all of the periphery, everything that's not the main story. Okay. So what does that mean? So there was a college, I think it was a college research study or something done years ago where they had all the students focus on someone talking or something happening, right? It was like someone giving a speech or whatever. I forget what it was, but they had a guy dressed in some kind of a crazy costume. Let's say he was dressed as a chicken or something. They had him run through the audience, right? So they're like this the researchers are telling people, everyone focus on this one thing. This guy's talking, this thing's happening, focus on it. And then simultaneously, they sent someone running through the crowd in this like chicken outfit or something. At the end of the study, they asked everyone, did you see the guy with the chicken outfit run through? And everyone said no. How is this possible? How is that possible? Because he was in the periphery. We weren't paying attention to the periphery. It was being taken in unconsciously. This is important. So it was being taken in unconsciously. It wasn't a direct threat, so it didn't register as anything. This is how the unconscious takes in information, and it gets stored in the unconscious. So while you're focused on the one thing, the periphery is just you're just absorbing. So maybe you see where I'm going with this in terms of media. There's, this is a known tactic or technique in hypnotherapy. A hypnotherapist will tell you this exact thing. They will tell you that if someone is particularly guarded, and they say at least that this is not most people, but if someone is particularly guarded, what they will have to do in order to hypnotize that person is give them something to do with their left brain. And they don't say left brain, but that's what it is, because they're giving people these tasks. They'll tell them to do math in their head or to do the ABCs backwards or something. They give the left brain a task, and then the hypnotherapist can just go right in and make changes in your unconscious. And, hypnotherapy, obviously they're doing that because someone wants to quit smoking or something. So the hypnotherapist is going to go in and just start implanting stuff. Now, when you are reading media, this is happening. This exact thing is happening. Again, whether anyone's doing it on purpose or not, I would argue at this point in the game, I would argue that it is purposeful. It is, there is some awareness at some level in the chain, even if it's not the reporter or the news station. At some level of the chain, somebody knows this. So they're presenting this story to you. This is what happened. Point by point by point by point. Read this article. This is what happened. This is the news. Weaved all throughout that content is the context, the assumptions, the setup, the framing, right? And this is why I personally believe that when we see people in these cultural groups, I'm with this group, I'm against that group, and they all say the same things, how did they all come to agree on the same thing and think that it was their idea, right? So I see people, one example is actually on this channel itself. I've had multiple people come through and say that the left brain thing has been debunked. The left and right brain has been debunked, but they never explain what exactly has been debunked and where that idea is coming from. But I know that if you go onto the first page of Google, you can easily find things talking about how the left and right hemisphere, the split, blah, 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 has been debunked. So it's always the same exact wording, the same exact language, even though, these people never quite explain what they mean, what exactly has been debunked about it. It's almost as if they don't know. They just know that this information came from somewhere. They think it's scientific. They think that makes it good. They think that makes them smart, and they just regurgitate it. But there's no concrete, there's no research at the individual level, right? And there's no concrete, this is where I got this information, this is why I know it. There's none of that, because that logical exploration and investigation never happened. What happened was, and I'm not trying to pick on the people who've said this, this is an example. What probably happened was they saw enough things. Their right brain took in enough of this context, right? The context is like, don't look at that. It's not important. It's been debunked. You don't want to be stupid, right? That's the subtext. The subtext is you don't want to be stupid, right? You want to listen to the scientists, right? And so because we have seemingly authoritative, knowledgeable people who are higher than us, more important than us, continuously framing things in certain ways, that framing becomes our automatic framing. Why? Because it's how the unconscious works. It absorbs. So I think it's funny and kind of naive when I hear people say that they're like woke and they can look at the media and tell what they're seeing and blah, blah, blah. Yes, I would argue what I said in the last video. If the intuition around that particular topic is intact, and that's a big if. That's a big if. If the intuition is intact, people do have a tendency to just look at a topic and say, no, that's not true. So this, we saw this in COVID, just masses of people like, that's not true. And I'll give you an example of this. My own personal experience with the COVID stuff and the news that started coming out. I remember the very first day it started, the very first day. And my partner got home from work and he was like, I don't have to go to work anymore. Like, there's a virus. Like, we can't. And I was just like, what? What are you talking about? And he turned on like a news story. We didn't really watch the news, but we turned it on just to see. And there was a local news reporter just describing the situation. And before I heard anything from anybody, I listened to the news report, the local news, this woman who probably thought she was giving the truth. There was no conspiracy. I looked at it, I listened to it, I watched it, and I was just like, that's not true. Like, it just came right into my mind. It was just like, that's not true. And like, imagine how weird that is. Really, I had not seen, to my memory, again, I was just finding out that very moment that this was even going on. So I don't think I had taken in any media, anything from anybody else. Certainly not hearing from conspiracy theorists or anything like that. And that was just like my organic reaction to that news story. I believe if I had had fear around that topic, if I was afraid of getting sick, if I was afraid of people dying, or somehow afraid of medical stuff, I believe if I was already afraid, I think I would have fallen for it. But because the topic was so meaningless to me, it was like flus and colds and we're all going to get a virus and it's so dangerous, I just didn't care at all. The only context I had in my own life for colds and flus was that I actually stopped getting them several years earlier. Now, I have since gotten sick once this year, but in the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I've barely gotten sick once. There was only really one time, and that was this year, that I happened to get like a sickness. So this was the context I had. What my right brain had gathered, pattern recognition, was that there's really no danger here. Like, you're probably just going to be fine. I actually, for whatever reason, when I was younger, several years ago, I stopped drinking alcohol regularly, and I never got sick basically once after that, except for that one time I just told you about recently. Never got sick again, never got a cold again, never got the flu at all. Nothing. Never got COVID. Never got vaccinated, never got anything. So that's my story, and I believe that what came up in my body when I was watching that news story, I believe that was organic, functional intuition. My intuition was functioning. I didn't have any fear. I wasn't confused. And for that reason, I was able to just immediately spot the weirdness of it. The fact that something wasn't really right about it. It wasn't being presented completely authentically. And so when we are taking in media consistently, media that confirms what we already think. It reaffirms things that make us angry. It reaffirms things that make us feel good about ourselves and feel smart. When we keep taking in that same sort of media, I'm really talking about, again, this liberal conservative split. That's the main split going on. There's probably many other ones. There's the anti-men, anti-women content that you see on the internet. There's different splits. But when we're taking in that information that we're already tangled up with for whatever reason in our history, in our past, we're already tangled up in it. Our intuition can't give us a clear signal. And so we fall prey to whatever signals being given to us through the media. It is quite like a vulnerability in a security system. That's what happens with our unconscious. It's pretty good. It's pretty on point. It keeps us alive. It takes in the context. It takes in the periphery of every situation, our environment, etc. When something looks weird, when something doesn't feel right, it gives us all this valuable information. But when there's a breach in that security system, that's where the bullshit comes in. That's where the left brain gets all up on its high horse and like, I know it's true. Rah, rah, rah. Those people are bad. Let's get them, get those other people. That's where the projection can start to come in because the unconscious doesn't know something. It can't see itself clearly because there's a wound. If not a wound, then again, just some sort of vulnerability. So this has nothing to do with disseminating concrete factual information. It has everything to do with creative storytelling, actually. So ask yourself this question when you're seeing things. What is the context? What is the framing? What is being obscured? What is being avoided? What is in the background that we're not allowed to mention? What is triggering emotional reaction? What is basically preying on any potential vulnerabilities in your unconscious? How is this piece of media purposefully poking at those vulnerabilities? That's it.